Today is a very unique opportunity for you all, I think, to take a bit of a step back, take a step away from the office, have a think about the longer term, your longer term objectives for your organisation, perhaps even for yourselves as employees. And I just want to put that there because it's a theme I'm going to return to in a minute. My name is Roly Walter. I'm the founder of a company called Appraisd, which is a very simple online one-to-one goal setting system. And I'm not really going to talk about that very much. If you would like to hear about it, please come and talk to us in the foyer later. What we are here to talk about is employee engagement and my own sort of question, which is there anything we can do to create the right environment, to increase employee engagement? And I'm going to run through these slides because we've had a lot of statistics already, and you've probably heard some of this before, but let's have a quick kind of recap. Hang on. There we go. Okay, so I'm using the Qualtrics UK Employee Pulse Survey 2017, which says that only 48% of workers in the UK are engaged, and that I think is probably the highest figure that I've seen in any of the surveys. We heard about Gallup earlier, which records it at lower than that. We also have 17% of UK workers are looking to leave their job in the next 2 years. So that doesn't mean that they will leave their work, and I've no idea, maybe the figure will be higher or lower than that. But 17% of people are thinking now, right now in your organisations perhaps, that they need to be out of here within the next 2 years. So they're thinking about it now with a plan to leaving within 2 years. 31% people look forward to going to work most or all of the time. So that means 69% of people look forward to going to work at your organisation, perhaps never or rarely or half of the time. And these figures are different in the US and other countries where they do these surveys. And I do think that's important to know that, you know, when you read things online, often you've got to make sure that they're set in the right context, in the right culture as well. Okay, 23% of people say they feel stressed or emotional at work always or most of the time. And according to Tiny Pulse, these numbers are getting worse as well. So, why do we care about this? Well, we've heard already that a decrease in employee engagement can lead to all kinds of other things like lower productivity, increased staff churn, absenteeism, lower business performance in general. We already heard from Kathy about that. Reduction perhaps in health and safety standards. I mean, if you think about your car that you arrived in today and imagine that there was one engineer for each wheel that bolted it on at the garage, one of your wheels was put on by somebody who really did not want to come to work today, perhaps, on that day. What is going on? Kathy, again, had probably a better slide than me on this. But there are macro factors at play, according to OnetoOne, for example, who did a survey last year.
We now know Kathy's taste in music.
Yeah. No problem. So OnetoOne did a survey last year which found that there is an increase in global anxiety, and I think we're seeing this all around the world with the increase in populist movements, the rise of defensive borders, perhaps the fear that we're all going to be replaced by robots. I don't know, but what we do know a little bit more about is what is going on at the workplace, and that is there's a new deal going on. There's a new deal between employee and employer. There's far greater public scrutiny, thanks to the internet, of course, and the changing world and the increase of digital connectivity. There's far greater public scrutiny of what employers are doing and what employees think of them, as we all know, with Glassdoor and many other things. And this effect is forcing some quite interesting changes, I think. In the old days, things were hierarchical. Now we're flat with self-organizing teams that we've just been hearing about at ASTA, where people gather together to create the team that works for the project that they need to do. In the past, we had autocracy, and now we have democracy, where people want to say what they think. In fact, more than that, they want to do what they want to do. In the past, we cared more about status, whereas now people are focused much more about a sense of personal achievement. And let's skip to the end here and just focus on this. In the past, you were an employee, you were lucky to get a job, and you were grateful, whereas now we're saying, what's in it for me? Yes, I'll come and work for you, but how are you going to How are you going to help me achieve my own kind of life goals? So that is the new deal that we're operating within. And I think some of the problems with engagement we're facing come to do with the friction between an organization that still operates in the old world or is trying to change but perhaps not fast enough with people who've got these expectations on the right-hand side here. Okay, so that's what's happening across the country and the world, I believe. And we could go on talking about that, but what I really want to talk about is what can you do, and what can you do in your organization? Is there something we can do to create the right sort of environment? It's been seen, that you need to pay people sort of a decent wage, and they need to feel like they're not a mug for working for you, of course. But we've also seen that increasing salaries, benefits, and financial-based benefits have limited effect after the initial. So you get diminishing returns. And of course, if you introduce a new benefit, you better make sure that it's going to work, because you can't take it away again. People just get used to the new norm, really. So, is there anything else that we can do? Well, what about some of these interesting kind of micro-reward schemes where you can, press a button and someone gets a donut, which do exist? Well, I like this, actually, because this is a bit more kind of personal and human. It's a bit more surprising. And I think one of the themes that will come out through the whole of today is this increased need for humanity and, normal human behavior in the workplace. And I do think that this sort of scheme does contribute to that. However, we have seen with some of our clients that interest in these things does tend to die off after a while. After 6 months, perhaps everything needs to be refreshed. And, this sort of effect that we're seeing here reminds me of something else that I heard about a while ago, and I thought would be interesting to share with you today. I'm sure many of you won't know what this is, but this is the Hawthorne Works in Illinois in 1924. And it's a cable packing company, or factory rather. And management were interested at this time in seeing if there's something that they could do to increase productivity. Okay, they didn't talk about engagement there, but we do know that there's a strong link between productivity and engagement, so this is a worthwhile study to look at. And so they decided they would change the lighting in one of the factories. So they went in and they increased the level of lighting in the factory. And they found, by measuring productivity, that productivity had increased. So they're delighted. However, 2 weeks later, productivity started to tail off and went back to normal. So they thought, well, never mind. So they changed all the lighting back to how it was, and productivity increased again, and then tailed off again. So, what does this mean? This is called the Hawthorne Effect. And what it talks about is the very fact of making changes and caring about your employees, or them being under, in that case, kind of them feeling like they were part of an experiment, led to a short-term increase in productivity. So it's quite interesting. And what it says to me is that this is a project that you'll never finish. It's something that we have to keep trying. We have to keep reinventing things. We have to keep innovating. But is there anything else that we can give employees, aside from the kind of sugar rush of the donut, that's perhaps a little bit more sustainable and perhaps free? Well, this is what we hear from our clients, and has been found in other surveys that we've seen as well, is that people want to feel a sense of trust. They want to be recognized for the good work that they're doing and the effort they're taking. They want to feel a sense of progress, and they want to get feedback from other people. People really do want to get feedback. Now, this makes complete sense to me, just as an ordinary human being. Okay, so I'm a founder of a company, and I'm probably extremely engaged on the whole. But even I have days when I feel like, I wish they would end, and I could just go home, or days when I feel like I'm kind of wading through treacle, or perhaps wading through slime, if it's my kid's bedroom. And, I just feel like I'm not making any progress, not getting any feedback. I don't know if we're all working the cutting edge of employee engagement here, and I'd be amazed if there was nobody here who didn't feel like that every now and then. Oh, and then I get a thing on my phone that says, ping, Roly, how are you feeling today in terms of your engagement, on a scale of 1 to 5? And I'm like, 0. Or maybe 2.5 if it's sunny. Take some of those, the data with a pinch of salt. Anyway, where do I go at these moments? I think about the bigger picture. I take a step back, a bit like what you're doing today. I think about the longer term goals, and I think it's okay because actually this annoying thing that I have to do every week is going to go away once we've done this. And, or this is a problem, it's never going to go away, but frankly the pain of solving it is just far greater, so I'm just going to stick with it and I keep going. Okay, by taking a step back, I think, and looking at the longer term goals, that's you know, how I kind of stay engaged. And that works with our team as well, I know that because we do it all the time. Okay, but, hang on, there we go. We're a small company, we've got 10 people, and I know I can do this all the time and I can talk to all of my people, but you need to do this at scale, you know, perhaps you have 1,000, 10,000 employees. How do you make sure this is happening, you know, all over your organization? And I'm afraid the answer is, according to me, put your managers, or I should just say people, to work. I think we've already heard about the kind of power of human relationships and bringing the humanity into work. This is what it's all about. Okay. I believe your managers are in the perfect position to increase engagement. However, they just need a bit of help. You know, managers are being asked now to become coaches, facilitators, trusted advisors, almost therapists. And they need to know that that is now what's expected of them, that we're trying to actually shrug off perhaps some of this kind of professional image, and actually they need to be more human. Okay. In order to get managers to be doing this across your organization, I believe you do need some kind of a process, some kind of a framework for managers to work within, and that is the one-to-one. Okay, I'm afraid this is sort of advice, a bit like saying, you know, if you want to lose weight, you have to eat 5 vegetables a day and go for a run. There's no kind of magic pill that's going to do this. A good one-to-one between an employee and a manager will provide everything that you need, or most of what you need to help with employee engagement. A good one-to-one will help build trust. You can give the recognition that that person needs. You can help collate and kind of talk about feedback that you've received, and you can inspire somebody by showing them what progress that they've made. And I believe that one-to-one is so useful. I basically spent the last 15 years of my life dedicated to this, which is kind of slightly tragic when I wrote that out. But anyway, my personal motivation for this is that I think when I started work in year 2000, I really struggled with this idea of having to put on a professional image at work, you know, and not be myself. I found it extremely strange, and I believe that actually, you know, that's one of the things that we're trying to tackle with all of these, with this one-to-ones and all the work that we do at Appraisd. We have a system, and this is the only screenshot I'm going to show you of our system. We have a system that has a button. This is a real screenshot, and it has a button that says, I need a one-to-one, and any employee can click that, and it'll send an email to their manager. That's all it does, and it says, I need a one-to-one. What more powerful way is there for managers to learn how valuable that time, that one-to-one, unique, special time that they have with their employees is? Okay. Now, how do you make sure one-to-ones are happening across your organization? It won't surprise you to hear me say that a very simple online tool can help enormously in terms of, you know, pounds spent per kind of per value obtained. I think it's definitely not the only way, but it is enormously helpful. So I'm going to go on and talk about what a one-to-one should be. It should just be a very simple, quick discussion. It can be long or short. It's up to the two people involved. I'm not talking about performance reviews with ratings and things like that. It's absolutely not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in 3 or 4 questions like this that would just enough just to provoke an interesting discussion, just to get people talking, just to tease out the interesting things. And there's absolutely no point in them talking about teamworking skills if they are really worried about something else at work. Try and resist bringing in all kinds of metrics and things like that. Try and cut all of that out. And I know that in HR or wherever you work now, we are sometimes under enormous pressure to quantify everything. Be strong, resist. Because if you don't, you're not putting employees first. And this is a bit unfair. I put HR first, scribbled out, because that's what we're trying to get away from. But what I really mean is metrics first, and kind of tracking and controlling. What we want is a system that is 100% laser focused on employees and being valuable to employees. Okay, if people aren't using it and they don't like it, then it's not working. It's not employee first. When you take an employee first, you're saying, here's a useful tool, but I trust you guys to get on with this and use this in the way that suits you. It's about giving up control and perhaps moving to a position of observation instead. Okay, I'm going to move. I've now got 2 slides of bullet points, and so I'm glad to hear that these are going to be shared out later, okay, because I'm going to race through these because I know we're against a kind of a tight schedule. Okay, if I haven't convinced you that one-to-ones, by the way, are the way forward, please come and see me later. If I have, here are some top tips. Okay, tell your managers about these figures, the engagement figures. Have this conversation. This shouldn't be a conversation that's just happening within these walls. The vocabulary of engagement, recognition, trust, feedback, and progress should be stuff that we talk about all the time with all of our colleagues in every meeting that you do with your managers. Okay, this stuff should be commonplace. Listen and respond to employees. If you are doing surveys, make sure that as well as listening, you actually respond as well. And if they're coming up with suggestions, you've really got to face them, even if the answer is no. Break down the hierarchies and get closer to what's expected in the New Deal. So I had my slide earlier about the new kind of organization that is flat and democratic. I'm just going to reiterate that, if you've got people expecting that, but your organization isn't structured in that way or doesn't allow people to work in that way, there will be friction. So try and break that down. And managers need to start going beyond this kind of professional image that I mentioned, where, you just sort of deal with everything at arm's length. We need managers actually to become much more human. They need to take an interest in the lives of the people that work for them. Be brave. This is uncharted territory for you. Anything that you do from this point on will be new to your organization, of course. So you need to be brave and be prepared that there may be a few experiments that fail as well. So try and make it cheap to fail. So whether that's politically cheap for your organization, or don't be locked into a kind of a long software vendor contract. In my view, these days it's inexcusable to be locked into any kind of long contract with a vendor. And don't stop. This is a project that you'll never finish. And I've got one final slide, which is more about if you are thinking about using an online or using sort of technology to assist you with this very kind of human process, here are some other ideas. A good system will help to educate managers as well as kind of give them a useful tool. You can use a system to communicate what you're trying to achieve. Let managers use it their own way. One department might do one thing, another department might do another thing, and that's fine, just let them. We need to allow, if we're going to ask managers to be more human, we need to allow them to use their own personality and their own style. Learn from others, but don't blindly copy. And following on with the next point is that, again, what you read in the press online is often based on US research, and actually the data can be quite different. So bear that in mind. Let your suppliers into your heart. I can't tell you how much more value you'll get from your suppliers if you tell them what your fears are, what you're worried about, what you're thinking about. Certainly with the suppliers that we've spoken to, we've become kind of very friendly with. It's been hugely valuable for us, and also we pass that benefit on back to them as well. Keep thinking employee first at all costs. When you go into a meeting and you talk about implementing some kind of a new process, whether it's online or offline, someone will say, can we just record, we've got all these competencies, can we just measure all of this, and can we just say no? Okay, employee first all the way. It's got to be something that people really get benefit from and really value themselves. Finally, be brave with the feedback. Surveys show that people do want to receive feedback. They don't necessarily want it all to be kind of gathered up by somebody in HR and chopped up and anonymized and things like that. People really want to know what other people think. So be brave with it. And again, there will be people perhaps in your organization who say, oh, I'm not sure about that. Maybe we should do this slowly. A decent system will help you roll out feedback and get feedback going, and so that it becomes part of kind of common practice and common culture at your organization. Okay. I've raced through this. I hope I'm still in time. Okay. Thank you very much for your time. As I said, we're on a kind of mission to make more one-to-ones happen across the world. So please come and talk to us about that later.